think we're all set. We're starting recording and transcription.
All right, thank you. Welcome, welcome everybody. Preventing Burnout in the Social Sciences Field featuring AMI Kids. Thank you all for attending, students, alumni, faculty, staff, for this evening's session. Just a few housekeeping slides before we get started here, and then we'll let AMI Kids, Tori and Becky have the floor. Our access and accommodations, just to inform you all, I'll read through here. While I'm reading through that, if you did register through Handshake, feel free to scan check-in in the chat, or on the on the slide here. Just scan your phone over it, and it'll check you in on Handshake for the event. Your experience here at Southern New Hampshire University is important to us. It is our policy and practice to create an inclusive and accessible learning environment. If there are aspects of this presentation's design or delivery that present barriers to accessibility, please notify the online Accessibility Center by emailing oac@snhu.edu or by phone at 866-305-9430. That's for online students. For campus students, Campus Accessibility Center by emailing cac@snhu.edu or by phone at 603-644-3118. And for SNHU staff and faculty, Human Resources Office by emailing hr@snhu.edu. The two more slides here. First one, I know a lot of you found out about this event through Handshake. Absolutely keep checking Handshake. That's where we post all of our virtual and on-site recruitment events. The majority are virtual, but you will see some on-site as well. So that's a great place to go. Jobs are obviously on there too. We get hundreds each day, but events like this one, right, are even better in my opinion because it's an opportunity to network, ask questions, engage with the employer, etc. And by the way, we're going to give AMI Kids the floor here in a minute after the presentation portion, which probably be 10, 15, 20 minutes. There's going to be a bunch of time for questions. So students, alumni, and then faculty and staff as well, of course, have your questions loaded. Be thinking of them. There will be plenty of opportunity for that. Right now, everybody's mics are disabled and cameras are disabled. At the end, I will give the option to either put your question in the chat or raise your hand, so to speak. There's an option there in the reactions towards the upper middle of the page. You just click the reactions button and then raise your hand. And if you raise your hand, basically I'll enable your microphone and camera if you want to verbally ask and kind of get connected that way if you have a question. So just a neat way to network. But as the session goes on, again, if you do have questions, feel free to just pop them in the chat as well. We'll be logging them that way too, and ask them in order received at the end. Okay. So Beth put some info in the chat. Thank you, Beth. But to contact our career office here for any career assistance support. So resumes, interview prep, job search preparation, salary negotiation, etc. Resources, anything career readiness related, we're here for you. cocecareer@snhu.edu, or you can call 888-672-1458, and then you see all the social media links at the bottom there. So absolutely feel free to connect, and we're here for you at any time. And again, Beth put the contact info for our office in the chat, so if you need to refer back to that, absolutely do so. I'm going to unshare my screen now, and Tori and Becky with AMI Kids, we'll let you guys have the floor.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, I am going to go ahead and pull up our presentation, or my presentation, and Tori and I'll kind of go back and forth talking about things. Here we go. All right. So hi everybody, my name is Becky. I am the recruiter with AMI Kids. I've been here for 2 years today with AMI Kids, and super excited to be here. I love getting the opportunity to talk to college students, whether first in, first year, throughout their career at the tail end. I saw that there's some graduation that's going on, so we're at that time of year, so congrats on that. And Tori, I will let you introduce yourself.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Tori Dalglish. I am a licensed mental health counselor in the state of Florida, South Carolina, and Texas. And I've been with AMI Kids for about 3 years now, and I just love it. So I'm looking forward to hearing all your questions at the end and hoping I can provide some insight into some of the amazing things we run into and some of the other stuff that we run into in the field and how we can better handle it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I'm just going to go through a quick overview of AMI Kids and who we are and some of the things that we do as an organization. So really what's probably the coolest thing about AMI Kids is we've been around for over 50 years. We are primarily based in Florida, but we are in multiple other locations, and we work very closely with many different types of organizations, from the Department of Juvenile Justice to local school systems, the clinical department within the states that we're in. There's a lot of partnerships that we have to work with the kids that we provide our services to. Some of the programs that we have as an organization, we've been contracting, coordinating, and providing juvenile justice services around the country for youth and families since we opened in 1969. We've served over 140,000 youth and families in over 44 different programs. Each of these programs that we have in the different states has consistently met or exceeded those expectations, which is why we continue to grow. We just over the last couple of years, we've added many more program models and locations. We've expanded in some of our other states. We've held contracts for many different types of services and varying risk levels, as you can see in this list here. And everything that we do as an organization is helping youth and families discover their potential, transform their lives, and strengthen the communities that we're in, to make sure that the kids are, growing into strong, positive role models through our evidence-based AMI Kids personal growth model, which is really cool. If you want to learn some more about that, you can check out our website. Brief overview of the types of positions that are available within our organization. So we do have many different opportunities as far as our programs, and this is working directly at our facilities. We also have education roles. We do have our corporate level positions, as well as our medical, and then of course our mental health department. Many different opportunities within the organization. It's not just a one size fits all. We do still have also some fantastic benefits with being an employee with AMI Kids. There's great growth opportunities, fantastic health benefits. We do have PTO and paid holidays, some fantastic wellness benefits. The topic of today's conversation that Tori is going to be discussing is really one of the things that AMI Kids prides themselves on, is just making sure that we are doing the best that we can as, in our day-to-day life. And then these are the states that we are currently in. So if anybody is in that area or going to be going to that area, let me know. I can probably find you a position within one of our programs and you can come work with our amazing kids. And again, that's just a breakdown of our careers. And there is my contact information as well as our careers information. So if you have any questions or anything, you can absolutely reach out to us via phone or email. That careers@amikids.org is monitored by myself and my team. So if you get a response back from us, it is a live person, not a bot. So please reach out if you have any questions. Tori, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Becky. As she said, we have a lot of different positions and every state is completely different. So case management in South Carolina looks a lot different than case management in New Mexico or Florida. We have certain states that have larger challenges, certain states that have more paperwork. So it is all very state specific. the one thing that I can say about AMI Kids is it is always kids first. Every step that we take is to help the kids that we work with. These are kids that the rest of society has basically discounted by the time they're 13. So it sort of warms the heart a little bit. It gets me a little teary, but it's an amazing, amazing place to work. And when we say you are family, you are family. So it's a great place to work. The other thing I would say about working at AMI Kids is that the amount of upward trajectory you have in your career is completely based on you. There is always room for leadership positions, professional development, training in different. So if you're in the clinical field, which is my field, I mean, I can't tell you how many different evidence-based practices that I've gotten just provided for me for free, which is great. Something else to put on the resume, more experiences and things like that. So if you are interested in the positions, please contact Becky because they do vary quite a bit from state to state, but they are all, well worth it. And it's a good culture. We're getting kids, the majority of our kids are in detention, even though we do have kids in foster homes that we run. We've got kids in transitional living. So it's a pretty huge gamut that we run. So we can, if you are interested in any position in AMI Kids, we can basically taper what you're looking for to a job position. We have had people that have moved from South Carolina to New Mexico because they want to be an executive director. So there's a lot of room for upward trajectory in your career in AMI Kids. All right, I said I didn't have a slide, but I am going to share a snippet because my job today is talking about tips on managing stress in the field from day-to-day perspective as well as overall. So social services, and I'm going to call it helping professions from here on out. I would title this, check yourself before you wreck yourself, because that is really what we have to do every day working in a helping profession. So I'm going to share my screen real quick because this is one of my favorite slides. Where did it go? Hold on. It disappeared. There we go. Can everybody see the picture of the pond? Becky,
Yes.
Can you? Okay,
Yes.
cool. So I go to the grocery store and I see self-care on a lot of magazines. I see mindfulness on a lot of magazine covers. And I think we really have to think about what that looks like, especially when we are working in the helping profession. So the reason why we have this picture right here is because working with the kids in our programs, working with social services, working with bureaucracy, and a lot of other things that you're going to deal with in a helping profession, you are going to jump into the pond of trauma every single day. You are going to hear about everybody's worst day, their worst experiences, what they're going through, this, that, and the other. Self-care is how you dry off. It's not just the mani-pedi that's on the front of the magazine at the grocery store. So when you're thinking about how you dry off at the end of the day or at the end of the week, there's a couple different things that we need to think about and be quote unquote mindful. I don't like that word, but mindful about how we respond to what we're doing to deal with it. So we've got physical, oh man, I had the worst day at work. I just have to go for a run. Or a ritual. I know I've got to go for a run in the morning, go to the gym before I jump into that pond, right? Because I'm going to be in a much better frame of mind. Emotional. Everybody in this profession has had a day where they get into their car and they either scream or cry. It's just part of the business. But getting that out, calling your best friend on the phone saying, I don't know what happened today and I don't know why I'm crying, but just getting the emotion out. Spiritual, that can be so many different things. It can be going to a service, going to church, calling your pastor, or just meditating, just, putting your breathing app on your phone and taking 5 minutes to just woo-saw the crazy day that you've had. And then relational. So the way that we counteract stress in our brain is through relationships. So positive relationships in our brain builds a system of safety. So if we maintain relationships, if we've got positive relationships in our life, then we're in a really good position to combat the stress that we're going to experience every day. And it will happen, I promise. So that's our responsibility to ourselves. And I think that's how self-care is normally looked at. But when you're in your position right now and you're either graduating or looking at expanding, into different positions and what your career trajectory is going to look like, looking at different employers. I mean, we are in an age where you guys have the ability to choose who you work for. I mean, this is pretty unprecedented where employees really have the capacity to choose and ask for what they need. And that is self-care based on employer. So does your employee have a safety plan? And when I say safety plan, I mean, is there a way for you to tap out when you are maxed out? Whether it's you've been working 28 days straight because you love your job and you love the people you work with, but you need a day off. Or whether it's I'm working with this client and everything is escalating and I need to ask for somebody to help me with that. Having mindful workspaces. Is there a fluorescent light in your office that twitches all day long? Because I've had those offices. It builds stress. So the employer their position in self-care is working on reducing the stress in the workplace, having tap out mechanisms, having plans for that, having mindful workspaces that, I mean, we run a bunch of boys programs, and when I walk into a program and it just smells like boy, I'm like, this is not a mindful workspace. Health and wellness programs, which like Becky said, we do offer at AMI Kids, which are great. And she challenges us, boy, howdy. We get emails every single month, walking challenge, running challenge, eating challenge, all sorts of things. So she challenges us, but that is part of your employer's responsibility. So when you're looking at where you're going to work, think about that. The self-care action plan is something that you can create, that you can share or not share with your employer. So a self-care action plan would look like, if I know I've worked 2 weeks straight and I haven't had a single day off, and if I work a 15th day, I'm going to lose it. That's a self-care action plan. Asking for what you need is the basics for that. If you know that volunteering at the local soup kitchen, when you've had a week of not being able to get anything done or accomplish anything, or move forward with anybody you're working with, that's also self-care. I need to feel at the end of the week like I actually helped somebody, which is the reason why most of us are in these professions anyway. So I just love this picture, and if you want background around, she was saving a duck from a swan, a baby duck from a swan, so that's why she was in there. So then I'm going to jump into just some stories. I'm not great at this. So I'm going to jump into some stories. When I say check yourself before you wreck yourself, starting in your college career. When I did my internship, well, first of all, this is a second career. This was a midlife course change, so to speak. I was a photographer for about 13 years, and I just needed something different. And so through some different experiences I had with family members, I was like, I want to help people, right? So you look at those experiences and then you go, okay, this is what I want to do. And I asked my husband, I said, hey, would you be okay with me doing this in graduate school? He's like, as long as you can check it at the door, because I don't want your heart bringing that stuff home every night. And so I had a long think about that. And I suggest that you all do too, because it doesn't mean that you can't be in the helping profession. You just need to think about the level of empathy and heartache that you take home every night, which is a big deal. If you cannot check it at the door, you will burn out. It doesn't mean you can't work in helping professions or be an advocate for kids or the people that you want to work with. An example of this is a girl that I did my internship with. So completed my master's degree, was in my postmaster's internship, and I was working with one of the girls, and she had graduated about the same time. After 2 years of a master's degree, she had about a week in her internship, and her heart was just too heavy, and she didn't get her license. So just thinking about the different avenues that you can take in the helping professions when maybe direct contact is not the best for your life as a whole. The second thing I would say is be transparent with the people you're working with. So I love the terminology temperature check. Like before you meet with a client, before you walk in and you start talking to other staff members, sit in your car and do a temperature check. Like whether it was like, man, I had a fight with my boyfriend last night, or the kids were up all night, or, you know, where are you? And be mindful about it. Just ask yourself where you are. Are you red hot raging today, or are you cool as a cucumber? So take those temperature checks before you walk in to see a client, before you walk into the building, and be transparent. I always really appreciate when people say, you know what, we're going to get through this today, but I just want y'all to know that I've had a bad day. And we've noticed that giving our kids, because we work with kids, giving our kids that transparency, we get a lot more honesty. Because we're being honest with ourselves, we're being honest with them, and it builds this amazing sense of respect between us as humans. That can manage the stress day to day overall. If you do your check, you're honest with the people you work with and that you're working for, then you're in a much better position to reduce stress, because you're not stressed about covering it up all day, just painting on that smile and be like, it's fine, don't worry about it. So that's part of the communication piece. Communicate with the team you work with. We work with kids. Our residential facilities have three shifts. Those are if you're interested, those are in New Mexico, Texas, Louisiana, Florida, and South Carolina. So you have one shift that works 8 hours, one shift that works 8 hours, and one shift that works 8 hours. So if you have a youth that talks to his mom in a residential facility and has a bad conversation with his mom, how are you communicating that to the next shift? So communicating within staff members is super important to keep the stress down, because if that kid flips out after dinner because he had a bad conversation with his mom and nobody knows what's going on, then that's just heighten the stress level in the entire program for kids and staff. As far as personally, just depending on what program or what area you end up working in, have a routine. So one of the best things I work in mental health, obviously, and one of the best things for bipolar disorder is having a routine. So if you are working in a chaotic environment, and these programs, any program pretty much in the helping profession will present you with chaos normally on a day-to-day basis. So if you have a routine that you stick to, then mentally, physically, biologically, you're a lot more liable to be able to maintain a lower cortisol level, a lower level of stress hormone, and be much better at controlling the stress levels that you have. The next thing I would say, I don't know if many of you have heard it, but we can't go into a profession like this expecting to save everybody. So there's this great, I call it the starfish story, but the story of a dad walking down the beach with his little girl, and it's covered in starfish. It's like, well, if they bake in the sun, they're not going to survive. And so she keeps picking one up and throwing it in the ocean, pick one up and throwing it in the ocean. And the dad asked, like, why do you even bother? Like, it doesn't make a difference. Look at all these thousands of starfish on the beach. And she said it made a difference to that one. So when you feel like you are swimming upstream in your work day to day, think about the one starfish that you got to, because you'll have those starfish and you'll never forget them ever. Let's see, what else do we have? Give yourself some slack. My intern supervisor, she was awesome. She was like 75 years old and she worked in prisons and everything. She was phenomenal. And I came to her one day and I said, how do I help this person? And she said, as long as you let them talk, you can't screw them up. So we need to give ourselves room to let other people vent. I had another client, he never did anything we talked about him doing coming into client sessions. I was like, why do you bother? Like, finally I asked him after like 6 months, I was like, why do you bother coming in? And he's like, I just need to empty the bucket. And I was like, what does that mean? He's like, I've got all these words in my head and nobody listens to me at home. I just need to come in and get it out. So the people that we work with, we have to remind ourselves are experts in their own lives. And that comes around us being experts in our own lives. Because we can re-traumatize ourselves, and we can pick up trauma working in the fields of helping professions that we work in. So the first thing, we'll come back to check yourself before you wreck yourself, is looking at the experiences you have had in your life and the reason why you are entering into this profession, whichever one in the social sciences you are entering into. Why am I doing this? Is it because I was hurt when I was younger and I want to help other people not have to experience that or get through it? That's great. But there are two types of trauma that you can experience working in these fields, just FYI. One is secondary trauma. Secondary trauma is basically when we have not dealt with our own stuff. So if I'm working in social work, we'll say I'm a social worker, and I'm working with kids that have been separated from their parents, and I was abandoned by my dad when I was 9, and I never went to counseling for it, and I never dealt with it, then I'm going to have secondary trauma. Because every time I work with a kid that is separated from a parent, I'm going to have that trauma. It's going to be a huge trigger, and it's going to be this layer cake where it's compounded on, and we get to a point where we can't handle it. So if you're going into a profession because of experiences that you've had and you don't want other people to experience those, or you want to help them through it, deal with your own stuff first. Because if you don't, you will not be helpful. You'll only be helpful to a point, I should say. And then we have the other kind of trauma that you can experience within helping professions, which is vicarious trauma. And vicarious trauma is basically we pick up what other people put down. So we are hearing stories that just break our heart. We're hearing stories where we're like, how are you even still walking around on the planet right now? So looking at those and exploring our feelings on those and being aware of our reactions, and then going through that self-care process. I just need to call my friend and cry. I just need to go for a run. Whatever self-care that you guys are using is going to be super important, and I can't get too much into self-care because it's so personal. You are experts in your own lives, just as the people that you're going to be working with are experts in their own life. So at the end of the day, and at the end of this little spiel, I would say check in with yourself before you walk into work. Check in with yourself before you walk into a job that may not be super supportive. Check in with yourself before you accept a job that maybe you need to do some work on yourself first in order to be the most helpful person you can. And at the end of the day, mani-pedis aren't such a bad idea. And that's all I've got for that.
Thanks so much, Tori. Really good information. I think you were talking about listening and listening more, right? And I think one thing is human beings, a quote that I try to live by is don't listen to respond, listen to understand. You know, I think too often we try to just get whatever our thoughts are out. So yeah, I appreciate all the takeaways there. I'm sure everybody on the call did. We had some questions come through. So we'll get into the Q&A portion now. Students, alumni, faculty, and staff, if you do have any more questions beyond what I'll address in the chat, feel free to put them in, or if you'd like to go on camera to ask, the reactions button towards the top middle, just click that, and then there's a hand raise. If you raise your hand there, I'll enable your microphone and camera for you to ask your question that way. So your two options, just wanted to present them to you, but we'll get into the questions portion here. Our first question came from Dana. She said, it's easy to let negative experiences overshadow the positive experiences. What are your suggestions for reminding yourself about the good work that you do when you have a rough day or week? Or do you have a favorite story about the work that you've done in a helping profession?
Sure. It's actually my first client I ever had. And so I do a lot of work with trauma, and I try to spread the word about the importance of being aware and responsive to the experiences people have had. It was my first client ever, and it was a gentleman who had been assaulted, and I was working at a community mental health center. He didn't have insurance, so we were the interns that just get everybody who didn't have insurance. And working in mental health, that CBT and stuff like that was not working. The assault had undermined his feeling of importance, his feelings of being a man, like every aspect of what was happening with this man. And I would say, when you feel like you haven't been effective, flip it and say, I've been challenged. Because that experience with my first client ever led me to investigate different ways to treat trauma. I became certified in EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and it changed my interactions with everybody who has had trauma in their lives that I've treated. So when you've had a bad day, sometimes you just have to, like I said, either have a good cry, but if you feel passionate about what you are doing, see it as a challenge, because there is so much stuff out there. I had no idea what EMDR was when I investigated it, but the amount of people's lives that it changed after that, the amount of clients that I worked with after that whose lives were changed immensely. I had one girl, she was 13 years old. She had found her mother passed away, and she couldn't remember anything about her mom before that experience. And through working with this tool, she could remember her mom loved butterflies, and that, so it's changed a lot of, so when you have a bad day, if you seek it as a challenge, you have the opportunity to change a lot more people's lives than that one person.
Perspective for sure. Thank you so much, Tori. Next question is from Becky. How do you check yourself at the door, right? We've been talking about that. So like you were saying with your husband, Tori, he basically made you promise, which good on him, right? Leave it at the door. Don't bring it home. So what's your recommendation for doing that?
Get a dog. No, I'm kidding. It does help. It is a very personal thing. If you know that you are not able to compartmentalize things and put, like that one person that I had worked with, she couldn't put it away. And I have a trait where I can compartmentalize things. I had a private practice for about 4 years, and I finally had to put the private practice away because I couldn't not answer the phone, because I was the only person. So I couldn't not answer the phone at 10 o'clock at night when somebody's in crisis, even though I gave them the number for the crisis line, things like that. So you find different avenues, and you're going to have to test the waters of where you feel comfortable. Because like Becky said, there's a lot of support that you can do. So right now, my current position is Regional Director of Mental Health for AMI Kids. I train other people. So I help with staffing cases, and I feel like me being able to give my experiences and my information to a lot more people, I'm able to touch a lot more kids. I miss doing face-to-face stuff, but you find different avenues, and the only way to figure out if you're able to leave it at the door is to try it. But if you have a master's degree in mental health counseling, social work, there is always going to be work out there. But you can't be effective unless you are comfortable in what you're doing. And if what you are doing is hampering relationships and home life and things like that, then you're not going to be able to be helpful to other people. So it is a bit of, throw the noodle at the wall and see if it sticks. But there's so many different things that are available out there working in helping professions, even if it's not face-to-face. So if you are an empath, if you do have the big, heavy heart, then there are still a lot of places for employment and a lot of value that you can offer to society through that.
Thanks so much for that. Definitely good insight. Some good questions coming through. I'll keep asking them, but yeah, absolutely. Audience, keep them coming. Students, alumni, absolutely keep them coming in. Good stuff here. So Beth asked, what's the best way to enter the field if you are not licensed?
It depends on your level of education. So licensure, it's a haul. I'm not gonna lie. It's a haul. So licensed mental health professional, I'm in Florida, but it varies from state to state. They are working on some legislature where if you are licensed in one state, you'll be able to work in multiple states. That's not through yet. We're waiting on one more vote for that. But you can get in on a very basic level. If you've got a high school education, you can be a tech at a mental health hospital. That only takes high school education. So you can get in on the ground floor if you just want to experience it and test the waters. If you have a bachelor's degree in social sciences, then you can be a case manager, which is great. That really gives you a full realm of experiences. That's a very, I mean, they call it social work for a reason, because it's a very social thing. You have to be able to communicate effectively with families, kids, and people that a lot of times don't necessarily want to communicate with you. So if you are the social butterfly and stuff like that, that might be something to look at. As far as licensure for mental health counseling, then that's another bump up. That's master's degree. If you are pursuing a master's degree in mental health counseling in the counseling field, I would recommend that you pursue something that's CARF credentialed. CARF is a registration, like credentialing that different colleges can get. They're trying to get that across all master's degrees for counseling. Most colleges have CARF classes, like they qualify, they're just not credentialed quite yet. That was the experience I had. My dream was initially going into the VA, and the VA was, now that they are actually accepting mental health counseling as a degree, they want you to be come from a CARF accredited school. They're getting more and more lenient on that, but there's more and more schools becoming CARF accredited. So if you're going to that level, then I would look at, for master's, something that's CARF accredited or something like that. If you want to work for someplace like the VA or something that's more government funded. And then once you get your master's degree, then you have a certain amount of hours that you have to work supervised. If you can find an employer that has a supervisor on staff, it'll save you about $15,000. So that's a big number, especially since, you know, we're paying for school and stuff. Supervision ranges from $100 to $150 an hour post master's degree, and you have to do 1,500 hours. I think it's still 1,500 hours. So 1,500 hours of direct face-to-face supervision, 1 hour per every 100. I'm trying to remember this. Anyway, it's about $15,000. So if you can find an employer that will provide somebody on staff to do your supervision, go that route.
That's a big number for sure. Thank you for all the avenues to explore. Beth, great question. Because I know with many programs, certification isn't necessarily part of it. It's optional after, right? As you guys probably know, as professionals in the field. So definitely a great question and awesome answers too. Dana mentioned, or she stated, you mentioned your EDMR certification. Where did you happen upon that in your research after your experience with your client? Do you have any recommendations for associations to join or networking resources for those interested in these professions to learn more about these certifications?
Yeah, so EMDR was developed by a lady, her name's Francine Shapiro, and she had a pretty high stress job. She was trying to find ways to treat PTSD war veterans after the first Gulf War, I think it was. And so she noticed something, like they were doing all these different types of therapy, narrative therapy, you know, regressive therapy, all these different therapies. And so she was going through a lot of stress, but she would take walks during lunch, like on her lunch hour. She would go take a walk, and she noticed that she felt a lot less stress when she came back to work from lunch. And so they did all these experiments because they thought it was physical. They thought it was like, oh, well, she's taking a walk, you know, it must be she's burning something off, or it must be the fresh air. So they did all these experiences, and then she noticed that her eyes were moving from one side to the other as she was looking at her surroundings taking this walk. This sounds bananas. So it took a really long time and a lot of journals, a lot of evidence-based stuff in order to get to the point where it's actually evidence-based. So when you're looking at anything that you're going to be working with, is it evidence-based practice? It took about 25 years to get this into the realm where now you'll see it on like NCIS or, you know, different popularized programs as an actual treatment for trauma and PTSD. I took mine through the EMDR Institute. It's not cheap, just caveat, FYI. It's normally 2 weekends, like 3-day weekends that you have to do. You are allowed to practice it with your clients to a point, but I would look at, I can put it in the chat if I can find it, or I can send it to you guys later. It's called EMDRIA, EMDRIA. And there's another institute called HAP, and they offer a lot of discounted EMDR trainings. And the reason why they do that is because they want people that are trained in it for mass crisis situations, school shootings, hurricanes, tornadoes, where you are on site immediately with people, and they want you to have the most advantageous tools in your toolbox to do that. So that's volunteer stuff that you can become part of different networks to be a volunteer. And I'll see if I can find the website for HAP. But that's really great. There are different variations of EMDR. There's group, there's recent traumatic incidents. But if you do have the chance and the cash to do the basic training through the EMDR Institute, that's the gold standard. And they're phenomenal. They're really phenomenal.
Thanks for the answer. Good question, Dana, for sure. Ed has a question. He raised his hand, so we're going to enable Ed's microphone and camera. And Ed, you have the floor to ask your question. All right. Oh, there's Ed. Hey, Ed, feel free to unmute yourself at the top there. And yep, we see you. Feel free to ask your question.
My question was, is AMA kids just throughout the United States or just certain states in America? Like I'm in Pennsylvania.
Okay, I think we used to have a program in Pennsylvania, but all of our programs are dependent on people giving us money, and it's normally from the state. So currently we do not have a program in Pennsylvania. If you ask my VP of operations, he wants to be worldwide. But currently we are in, and I think we can refer back to that slide that Becky had as well. New Mexico, let's see, New Mexico, Louisiana, Alabama, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina. So we're in, I think, about 10 states currently, but we're always looking for expansion. So Ed, if you know anybody who wants us to start a program and wants to give us money to do that in Pennsylvania, we will take it.
I was just wondering because my major is going to be healthcare administration. That's why I was wondering, like, if you know, like if that would be like an opportunity I can go to as far as like with my major, if there was a program here in Pennsylvania.
Okay, yeah, I mean, FYI, I work virtually. I travel quite a bit, but I work from my home office most of the time. I'm the regional director of mental health, but I also manage our online records, our electronic records. So there's always opportunities. So if you put AMI Kids on your radar in Indeed or something like that, there are virtual opportunities that come up.
Thank you, Tori.
Good question.
Thanks, Ed. Awesome. Let's go back to the chat here. We had 1 or 2 more questions, and Tori, folks have been popping in resources and everything that you've been mentioning, the HAP training and some other ones, just FYI. And then Celeste also researched and found that Nebraska has indeed become the 10th state to sign the interstate counseling compacts into law that you were just speaking about. So that's good news.
That's awesome. I saw Florida was like number 9. I was like, come on.
Yeah. Double digits. That's good. Beth asked a question in the chat. Are there opportunities or maybe opportunities you've heard of that you would recommend to move in and out of the counseling field just to give yourself a break from the burnout?
There's always part-time stuff. There's always part-time. I mean, everybody right now as an employer is on the serious struggle bus. Like, everybody's looking for quality employees. So I would say part-time is probably a good thing. The one issue moving in and out of the field is that the biggest caveat with counseling is that you have to be able to develop a rapport with your clients. So you can't just have one meeting and give them informed consent and then you have a rapport. A lot of the kids that we work with now with transitional living, we're up to like 13 to 23-year-olds. They've been let down by every single person in their life most of the time. You know, a lot of them, they're living with grandma. We don't have any relational connections. They're hanging out with bad kids. They're living in a bad neighborhood. So they don't trust anybody. So you coming in as somebody that's quote unquote telling them what to do, plus they are court ordered to be at your program, it's a tough nut to crack. And anybody that comes into your office, whether you're in private practice or in a detention center or a place like ours, you have to crack that nut, but it takes a lot of time. So if you're looking at coming in and out, I would say, and you're doubtful about your capacity to endure some of the stuff, if it's, 40 hours a week, I would say part-time is probably your best bet, because then you're going to have a consistent caseload of clients. So even though you might only have 5 clients instead of 25 clients, the important piece is that you maintain that relationship with those specific clients instead of getting to the point where you overwhelm yourself with 25 clients and everybody's all over the place and you feel maxed and you're not helpful. So that's what I would suggest. There's also some telehealth options. I'm not the biggest advocate for telehealth. I know that it's been super positive in COVID, but you can't read body language. You can't read eye rolls or sighs or things, that are important to really read when you're working with people face to face. But it does give people an avenue to ask for help when they need it. And so building off of that piece, when somebody shows up in your office, that's the hardest part of their whole counseling experience, is just saying, I need help, or I showed up and I'm here. Let's see what happens. That's the hardest part. Everything else is pretty much downhill for them anyway after that.
Good to hear, and thanks for bringing to light the part-time options, for sure. As of right now, that's all the questions we had in the chat. So if there's any final ones, we got probably time for 1 or 2 more. If there is any, absolutely feel free to pop them in real quick or raise your hand. In the meantime, Tori, Becky, absolutely thank you all so much for attending. I'm going to give you the floor real quick in case you had anything in closing you wanted to state before we conclude here.
I just want to say I'm super excited about all the questions, and thanks for popping everything into the chat, because that helped me from not like doing the dual screen thing, trying to look stuff up. But I'm just so excited to see all the people on this call that are interested in helping other people, because I think we need a lot more of it in the world today. So I wish you all the best of luck. And if you have any questions, Peter will know how to get hold of either Becky and I. Becky is the hiring resource. If you've got counseling, case management questions, things like that, then you can direct them towards me. But I just want to thank everybody for joining in the call tonight.
Yep, absolutely. And I definitely want to say thank you to Tori for coming on behalf of AMI Kids to talk to everybody about all of the great resources and what she knows about our world, right, from the mental health side. Thanks to the team over at SNHU. You guys are great partners. And like Tori said, if you guys have any questions about any opportunities that we have available, check out our career site. You can also email me at careers@amikids.org or my direct email, which Peter just put into the chat. I'd be happy to help anybody out with anything. But I'm looking forward to getting some resumes coming in from you guys if you have questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much all for
I
attending.
did just put my email into the chat too, in case people have like clinical or case management specific questions. So you don't get more emails, Peter, but I hope that's helpful. But yeah, it's been awesome.
Okay. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank
Thanks.
you. You too.
Too.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks so much for presenting. That was amazing.
All right, Beth, did you stop the recording yet? I can't tell.
No, I haven't. Let me stop recording now.
No problem.
Boop. There we go. Recording.